We are here to feature one of my new favorite products from one of the oldest, most trusted indexes in all of DeFi. We have on Allan G from Index Coop, who recently at Index Coop, they incorporated sfrxETH into their index. Big news, and we wanted to give them a huge feature because we think this could really benefit anybody out there who's like looking for yields and stuff. So, Allan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so for maybe people who are newer to DeFi, because I remember when Index Coop came out years ago, but for those who are newer to DeFi, what exactly is Index Coop, and like what are you guys offering to people?
Yeah, so IndexCoop is a DAO that builds decentralized token products for all sorts of different DeFi strategies. So we actually got our start almost 3 years ago. It's crazy to say that because that feels like a lifetime. With the first product being an index token, a basket of tokens that are DeFi specific. So it's called the DeFi Pulse Index. A lot of people that were around then remember it fondly. And we were the sort of the DAO behind it, helping grow the product, teach people about what it was, and then also bring other products to market since then. So that's still our flagship product, but since then we've launched over a dozen different index and sort of strategy type tokens that solve different problems and make DeFi a little bit less scary, a little bit more accessible for people.
Nice, nice. And can we go into this LSD or LST index? I'm not sure what Index Coop calls it, and what you guys recently did with FrxETH.
Yeah, absolutely. So the index that we launched that's LST specific is called Diversified Staked ETH, or dsETH is what we call it. And the premise behind that is that there is an ever-growing ecosystem of LST tokens. There's also a lot of sort of analysis paralysis that people can find themselves in when they are trying to make a decision on, do I go with Lido? Do I go with Rocket Pool? Do I go with Frax? And
Analysis
those
paralysis. That is a brilliant term. I'm stealing that from now on.
I stole it from someone else. So it is definitely a dilemma that some people find themselves in. And then there's also a lot of nuances to the LSTs. Like the way that Lido solves certain problems and the way that they architect their protocol is different than the way that you guys do it, the way that Rocket Pool does it, the way that Stakewise does it. So there's actually a lot of variety out there, even if they provide a similar sort of service at the end of the day. So being an index provider, we took a look at some of the top LSTs and really began to see the value and see customer value in having one-click access to a basket of these different tokens. And there's a couple of different benefits from putting it all in a basket together, but one of the motives behind the token was we wanted to weight all the assets inside according to how decentralized the underlying protocols were. So just having the largest market share wasn't going to get you the largest representation inside of the token. We really wanted to pay attention to things like node operators. We wanted to pay attention to things like how well stake was distributed across those node operators. But we also wanted to allow for newer LSTs and newer protocols to make their way into the index and for it to be one more sort of distribution path for customers to just have a growing number of LSTs that they hold sort of indirectly through the dsETH index token itself.
So, what is the methodology you guys use for this index? You mentioned node operators. I'm sure performance has a large part to do with it. What are like the highest weighted parts of this methodology, and how has this index evolved over time?
Yeah, so before tokens can be considered for inclusion, they have to clear a couple different criteria. Part of it just has to do with the LSTs themselves. So one of the biggest ones is, does the LST have a competitive APR? If a protocol has a very high commission rate, then we don't really want to subject users to that because we want them to walk away with as much of the staking rewards as possible. So some LSTs get disqualified because of that. We also want to make sure that the issuing protocols are audited, heavily audited. They have bug bounty programs that are funded. We want to make sure there's sufficient secondary market liquidity for all the assets inside. So I think there's a $25 million threshold there. And then there's a few other little more nuanced criteria that a LST has to clear in order just to be eligible for inclusion. So once tokens sort of clear all those hurdles, we take a look first at the number of node operators that are supporting the issuing protocol. If you are a protocol that has many unique node operators that are distinct from one another, you are going to do a little bit better in that scoring system, and so your likelihood of getting a larger weight is higher. So that's sort of step one. Step two.
I can't wait till FrxETH v2 comes out. Then the weight will get bigger.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and it's interesting because we sort of get to take like a zoomed out view of the space. So we're watching how Stakewise develops. Stater launching recently, they also are. I think everyone is really moving in a similar direction, but with the second version of the sfrxETH, it will get a big bump whenever there's more node operators that are supporting the token.
Yeah. And can we go over the process of like how sfrxETH got, when did it get added? What's the current weight of FrxETH and sfrxETH? I mean, go ahead.
So we do a semi-annual rebalancer once every 6 months. And any tokens that clear all those criteria are introduced to the index. So we run all the numbers, we figure out what the new composition is going to be. So sfrxETH got included for the first time. If there's a quicker way to say, I always say sfrxETH because that's just how I read it.
I say sfrxETH.
sfrxETH. All right, I think I like that better. I'm gonna use that. So sfrxETH got added at the end of kind of mid-July is when we did the formal rebalance, and right now it's sitting at a little bit less than 17% of the index, and the rest of the index is Lido, Rocket Pool, and then Stakewise.
70%. That's a pretty nice number. So how much sfrxETH is actually in this? How big is this index? Like how much sfrxETH is in this index?
So right now the TVL, the index is a little bit less than 2 million. The actual unit count would be, I guess, about $340,000 worth. In terms of the tokens themselves, I would have to do a quick check for you, but
okay, cool. And if I wanted, to add to and diversify my staked ETH portfolio, where could I find this Index Coop? Where could I find this index, and like how would I be able to acquire it?
So there's liquidity for the index token itself on UniV3. So your friendly neighborhood DEX aggregator or platform would have easy access to it. We also have an app ourselves that we operate. The tokens, the index tokens, all of our index tokens are fully collateralized. So they are actually made up of all the underlying assets. So what that means is you don't just have to rely on whether or not there's DEX liquidity for the index. You could actually just show up with all the underlying assets and mint new units of the index. So we also have a path through our app for people to do that. We see typically it's whales that are using that sort of function. They can show up and they can mint 1,000 new units of dsETH if they wanted to, and you can always redeem it as well. If you had the index and you wanted to redeem it and sell everything for sfrxETH, then you could do that rather than relying on pure DEX liquidity to get in and out.
Can we talk about fees real quick, just so people know what they're buying?
Yeah, absolutely. So on all of our products, we charge a static. We call it a streaming fee. It's sort of like an annualized fee that people realize block over block. So that's why we call it a streaming fee, because it actually uses that mechanism. It's 25 basis points or 1/4% on an annual basis. So we tried to find the sort of sweet spot between people are already paying a commission on these LSTs, and we really don't want to add much more to that than we absolutely have to. One of the nice parts, one of the things you pay for if you hold the token is that we do all the rebalancing. We make sure all of those different access points are available at no cost to the user. So if you're holding dsETH for the next 5 years, we're going to rebalance it 10 times and you're never going to pay a single, no gas at all as we perform those rebalances as the operator. So we try and keep that fee low and relatively in line with about 5% of the expected yield on the index itself.
Yep. And
is there a fee?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. Is there a fee for redeeming and minting?
There is no fee for issuing or redeeming the tokens. So it's really only that streaming fee. Obviously, if you buy on DEX, there's a swap fee that you'll pay, but I think that's around 5 basis points.
That's pretty nice. There's not a minting or redeeming fee. I have one last quick question before we go. In a few words, why should people go with your index over other LSD indexes that might exist?
So I think ours is the lowest risk for the best relative return. Those are kind of boring terms to use. That's not a great, like catchy one-liner, but we looked really hard at some of the alternatives and some of the implicit risks that people are accepting, knowing or not, and having a static index that is exposed to very little risk outside of just the pure smart contract architecture. We feel like is a better fit for someone that's really motivated over the long run to stake their ETH and just let it build on itself. It's not an LP pool under the hood. That's probably the next closest alternative. And there's certainly some risk there that we think people can kind of earn a higher return for without having to take that risk.
Mm-hmm. Nice. They can just sit and chill. Allan, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of This Week in Frax. And we hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.